ladies and gentlemen, movie lovers of all kind, and welcome back to the channel. As always, I am your host, Brett Murphy, and for today's video, it is going to be another Godlike 2 Not Quite, which is essentially just my version of a tier video. And in this one, we are going to be tearing up every Batman movie villain. So of course, The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves and starring Robert Pattinson, has finally released in theaters, giving us a few new villains to add to the list. So how do they compare to decades worth of competition from Batman's iconic rogues gallery? Well, we're about to find out. I just wanted to address that there will be a few notable absences on this list that some people may be expecting to see. The first one being Anne Hathaway's Catwoman from The Dark Knight Rises in 2012. Most other lists that I've seen have included her, but I have decided not to. And the reason why is because I just don't really see her as a villain. Sure, she does start the movie off as a cat burglar and a con artist, and yes, she does turn Bruce over to Bane, but in that scene right there, you can see the switch, the instant regret in her eyes. From there, she helps Batman save the city, comes back for him when she says she wouldn't and kills Bane, and then they run away together and live happily ever after halfway across the world. Yeah, that doesn't really sound like a villain to me. She may start out that way, but I'd say she's more of just a con artist due to circumstances. But her true colors shine through as the movie progresses, and she's a good person. The next one being Joaquin Phoenix's Joker. Yes, sure, Bruce Wayne is featured in the movie, but he's only like 10 years old, and yes, I do understand that in the movie's climax, Bruce's parents are killed, but he is not Batman yet, and I'm willing to bet that in Joker's sequels, or sequel at the very least, Batman will not be making an appearance. And lastly is Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman from The Batman. Look, she's just not a villain at all in this movie. She goes to steal maybe one thing, and it's for her friend, and it's just actually stealing back something that was stolen from her. Her and Batman get in that one little scuffle that you see in the trailer, and then after that they are working together for the rest of the movie. So I really don't see her as a villain whatsoever, and she will also not be included on today's list. Before I hop into things, I just wanted to let you all know that I have an entire playlist dedicated to all of my tier videos. So be sure to check that out, and I guarantee you'll find something you like. And so without further ado, let's start tearing it up. Okay, so as always, I will quickly go through the tiers just so we're all on the same page, because if you might have noticed, my tier names are a little bit different from the norm just because I wanted to make them a little more me. So the first one being the Godlike tier, which is your S tier, or whatever your God tier, essentially, above everything else, the top of the top of the top. Next is Awesome Sauce, replacing that A tier. Good as Gold, replacing the traditional B tier. Quite Alright, replacing the C tier. Super Meh, replacing the D tier. And last but certainly not least, Rock Bottom, replacing the F tier. Alright, let's get into it. First and foremost, Jack Nicholson's 1989 Joker, going right in the Awesome Sauce. I don't think he belongs straight in Godlike. He is probably my third favorite live action Joker, fourth favorite Joker in general, but that's very high praise because the Joker is my favorite villain of all time in any medium. Jack Nicholson knocked this version out of the park. The more whimsical, the more goofy, the more childish version, he absolutely nailed it. I love his laugh. I love his antics. I mean, he kills a guy with one of the little shock rings and stuff like that. He holds it that long that the dude turns into a skeleton. He's got the chattering teeth. He's got the jokes. He is, again, the far more whimsical version and childish take on the character, and I think he crushed it, and I absolutely love his version. So don't think that Awesome Sauce, A tier, is bad by any means. Next, Arnie's Mr. Freeze. Completely missed the point of the character. As we should all know by now, this movie was only made to sell toys. The studio told Joel Schumacher to basically make a giant cartoon so they could sell toys. They missed the mark on Mr. Freeze more than I think anyone could have ever imagined. Mr. Freeze is a tragic character. He is not a goofy, over-the-top, one-line spouting character at all. He's not constantly making ice puns. He may make the occasional one, but he is a tragic character, and they completely misunderstood him here and completely misrepresented him and absolutely ruined the only live-action take we have as of right now. So, yeah, horrible, horrible portrayal. Love Arnie, but this was not it. Bane from Batman and Robin. Exact same thing. Completely misunderstood the assignment. That is not Bane. That is complete and utter shit. That is a juiced up, voiceless, faceless henchman. He does absolutely nothing but grunt and groan and occasionally fight with Batman. Missed the mark by a landslide and a half. That is not Bane. Bane is a tactical genius. Sure, when he gets venom pumped into him in like the comics and video games and stuff, he does lose his mind a little bit, but never to that degree. That is complete garbage. So yeah. Jim Carrey's Riddler, I'll actually put him in quite alright. He is the only reason in my mind to watch Batman Forever. Other than that, I really don't care for the movie very much. Even though he's not like the traditional Riddler, he's definitely a more over-the-top, zany version. He's Jim Carrey, okay? He is Jim Carrey's Riddler. You know Jim Carrey or his body of work at all, then you should 100% understand where this version of the character came from. So, absolutely, I think he did well, and I think that's the most enjoyable part of Batman Forever, personally. Cillian Murphy as Scarecrow, I'll put him in good as gold. I wish he had a more leading role in Batman Begins as a villain, because I really think that he could have done so much more with the character. He is kind of like the second villain, I guess, of Batman Begins, but he gets taken out really easily, and he doesn't actually have as much screen time as I wish he had. He makes an appearance in like the first scene of The Dark Knight, and I'm pretty sure that's it, and then he's briefly seen in The Dark Knight Rises. Cillian Murphy is one of the most underrated actors working today, and I think if you would have given him a leading villain role and had him actually be the whole, that the whole plot revolves around him being the villain, I think he would have knocked it out of the park more than he already did. So, based off what we have, good as gold. But I feel like if we would have had a whole movie centered around him, he easily could have been Awesome Sauce or Godlike, because I think the dude's acting talent is of that caliber. Next is Daggett from The Dark Knight Rises. You probably barely remember him because he's barely even in the movie. That kills me because I love Ben Mendelsohn as an actor, and I love him even more as a villain. His work as Nolan Sorrento in Ready Player One, his work as Orson Krennic in Rogue One. This is like Ready Player One, Rogue One. Anyway, I love those characters, and I think he is a great actor in villainous roles. I think he's a great villain actor is what I'm trying to say. And he's just giving nothing to do here. He is like a snarky little businessman who plays like the smallest part in Bane's plan, which we'll touch on shortly, and then he's very unceremoniously killed off. So it makes me sad because I love Ben Mendelsohn, but he really just isn't giving anything to do in this movie at all. This one, I don't know if this is going to be controversial just yet, but if you have seen The Batman, then you should know. Paul Dano's Riddler is among my favorite movie villains ever. He's definitely towards the top of my favorite comic book movie villains ever, and he's probably among the top of my favorite movie villains in general, not just comic book movie villains. I love his unhinged, sadistic, but undeniably brilliant approach. This is a Riddler who is not a step, 2 steps, 3 steps ahead of the Batman. This is the Riddler who is 5 steps. I love how you can see the screws coming loose. I love when he's being very tactical and almost playful with these killings and with Batman and everything like that. I think Paul Dano, right out of the gate, was the perfect casting again. Just like Cillian Murphy, among one of the most underrated actors working today, I knew right out of the gate that he was the perfect casting for this character. Every time he was on screen, I had goosebumps, but yeah, I cannot praise Paul Dano's performance enough, and he is absolutely deserving of the Godlike tier. Darkseid, I'll put him in quite alright. Look, I love Darkseid as a villain, and I know some people might be like, well, you're not including certain people, but you're including others. Look, I know Justice League isn't a straight-up Batman movie, but Batman plays a key role in both Justice League 2017 and Zack Snyder's Justice League. He's the one that brings the team together. He's the one that kind of acts as the leader in Superman's absence. So I absolutely think that Darkseid and Steppenwolf, you will see later, are part of Batman's, not his traditional rogues gallery, but in my ranking of the Batman movies, I included Justice League 2017 and Zack Snyder's Justice League, so it wouldn't make sense for me not to include the villains. So Darkseid, I love him, and that's why he ends up in quite alright, but he really only has like a couple of scenes and some dialogue, so yeah, quite alright's really all I can give him without actually seeing his full villainous portrayal in a sequel or anything like that. Danny DeVito's Penguin, love it. He, again, in typical Tim Burton fashion, he goes for the much more whimsical, over-the-top, just absolutely insanely just goofy Tim Burton-esque version, right? He's got the flippers, he's got the nose, he's sniveling and snarling all the time, and he's like biting people's noses off, and he actually has an army of penguins and stuff, so he definitely went for it. Again, another instance of just a perfect casting choice for one of Batman's most iconic villains. And I think he knocked it out of the park. I think he really did a super, super awesome job in the role. And he's one of the best parts of Batman Returns, which is an all-around great movie. So that's definitely high praise. Aaron Eckhart's Harvey Dent / Two-Face. I'll go with good as gold. I think his part in the movie, The Dark Knight, overall deserves probably awesome sauce, but if we're talking strictly about him as a villain, as Harvey Dent, aka Two-Face, he really isn't in the movie all that long, and that's why I can't justify putting him any higher. I think Aaron Eckhart's performance was genius. I think he embodied everything that we know and love and understand about Harvey Dent, and I think that they portrayed his switch to Two-Face just phenomenally. But the character himself is not given a ton to do in that final act of the movie, so good as gold is all I can really justify. The 2005 version of Falcone or Falcone, Carmine Falcone, the mob boss of Gotham, one of the big ones, he could have been really good, I think. That one scene where he's kind of interrogating Bruce in that like underground criminal bar, I think that was magnificent. I thought that was awesome. It was filled with tension. It was super intense. I loved it. But then he just like gets taken down, and then he gets visited by Cillian Murphy's Scarecrow, gets, doused with the fear toxin, and then immediately he's just taken to Arkham Asylum, and I don't think we ever see him again for the rest of the trilogy, so I can only give him Superman because he only has, like, a scene or two. I think he could have been great, because I think the performance in just that one bar scene alone pulls him out of the rock bottom tier. Can you imagine if we had a full movie, or more, if he was kind of an in-and-out villain across the trilogy? Could have been something really special, I think, but with what we have, that's all I can give him. Carmine Falcone from The Batman, 2022's The Batman, played by John Turturro. I'll go quite alright. In my spoiler-free review, I said that there were a few characters I wish we had a bit more of, and he is definitely one of them. I think he is a wonderful actor, and I think he did so well in the role, playing this sleazy businessman, mob boss. He did so well in the role. Absolutely loved him, but he just didn't have enough screen time to really bump him up any higher, is what I'll say. I don't want to get into spoilers for The Batman because it's still really early, but I just wish we had more time with him because I feel like I would have cared more about his character arc and where they went with him if we actually got to see him be a bit more of a villain throughout the movie. So I think based on the performance alone, quite alright is definitely justifiable, but I can't go any higher because I don't think we get quite enough time with him. And next we're continuing along the train of the Batman with another new villain, being Colin Farrell's Penguin. And believe it or not, I'm actually going to put him right up next to Danny DeVito's Penguin. Not only is the makeup some of the best makeup work I have ever seen in my entire life, if you just showed that picture to someone, they'd be like, "Oh, who's that guy? I feel like I recognize him from something else." Maybe they'll try to play it up a little bit. They're not going to look at that and go, "Oh, that's Colin Farrell." If they didn't know it was Colin Farrell, they're not going to look at that and say, "Oh, that's Colin Farrell in makeup." The transformation that the makeup team was able to accomplish with this is unlike anything I think I've ever seen before. It is miraculous how different he looks. And on top of that, Colin Farrell embraced the makeup and became the character. That's another huge point I gave in my full spoiler-free review for the Batman, is that Colin Farrell was more than just the makeup. Sometimes you see great makeup work with like so many of, say, Johnny Depp's roles, but then he hams it up a bit too much and it doesn't really work. No, Colin Farrell, they changed his appearance completely, and he changed his personality completely, and he became this version of the Penguin. And I had no doubt in my mind that this was like a completely different actor taking on this role. That's how transformative both the makeup and his work was. So bravo to him, and I really hope we get more of him in however many other Robert Pattinson starring Batman movies we get. Tom Hardy's Bane. Awesome sauce. I would have put him in Godlike. I think he is arguably the strongest element for the first 2/3 of The Dark Knight Rises. You think he's going to be this big villain. He has so many great epic monologues. I love the mask, okay? I love the mask. I love the voice personally. I love how he absolutely kicks Batman's ass. I love how he's played up as this tactical genius mastermind. I love all of it. But in the third act of the movie, we find out that it wasn't his plan at all, and he isn't really a mastermind. He was just fulfilling someone else's plan, and then he's very unceremoniously killed off. And that irritates the shit out of me. I really wish that a character we'll be talking about later, I really wish that her twist wasn't in the movie and they just let Bane be the main villain. I think that would have been so much better, because in those first 2/3 of the movie, he is a godlike villain, in my opinion. But as we hit that last stretch of the movie, when all of the cards are on the table and everything is revealed, I think it does knock the character down a fair bit, which is really upsetting to me, because I love Tom Hardy and I loved his portrayal of Bane. Another one that some people might not agree with being on this list, again with some of them that I left out, but look, Harley Quinn, Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn, was in the Suicide Squad, and we do see her kind of fighting and interacting with Ben Affleck's Batman, making her, in that world, a Batman villain, so I'm going to include her. I think her portrayal as Harley Quinn across Suicide Squad 2016, Birds of Prey, and The Suicide Squad is a godlike performance, but I won't put her in the godlike tier because, again, she's not really like a Batman villain. Like, I understand Batman in the Justice League, as we saw in Peacemaker, do exist in the same world that Harley Quinn embodies. He was in Suicide Squad 2016, so, and she's also running rampant in Gotham in Birds of Prey, so we know that she exists in the same world as Batman, Ben Affleck's Batman, so I do include her. I think her performance is one of the best casting choices of all time. She kills the role, but because we don't actually see her interact with Ben Affleck's Batman all that much, I can't put her in the godlike tier. Mark Hamill's Joker, plain and simple, I said that the Joker is my favorite villain of all time across any medium. Mark Hamill is my favorite portrayal of my favorite villain of all time across any medium. If we're talking about animated features, if we're talking about the animated series, if we're talking about animated movies, if we're talking about the video games, I read Batman comics, I picture Mark Hamill. I hear the Joker laugh, and my favorite is Mark Hamill's. Everything about Mark Hamill's portrayal, as even different versions of the Joker, the more whimsical, hammed up version that we get in the animated series, the more serious and kind of cynical and sinister version we get in the Arkham games. No matter what, Mark Hamill brings it every single time. He is my favorite actor to ever take on the role, both animated and live action. It's my favorite version of the character, and it's my favorite villain of all time. So obviously, godlike, without a doubt in my mind. Lau from, The Dark Knight. I don't know if I can put him in. Yeah, rock bottom look. It's another one that he just doesn't do that much. It's like Ben Mendelsohn. He's in the movie a little bit. We kind of see him on the screen a little bit, and he's kind of the guy behind the curtain. And then we get that one instance where Morgan Freeman as Lucius Fox goes to, I believe it's Hong Kong, to visit him and stuff like that. And you know that he's this kind of snarky businessman that does definitely have his hands dirty in the mob side of things in Gotham, but he's barely in the movie, and then he doesn't do anything, right? He doesn't do anything. The performance is fine. Like, there's nothing against the actor at all or his performance. He does what he's supposed to do, but he's just not in it enough or villainous enough for me to pull him anywhere out of rock bottom, because he just doesn't give me anything to work with. Heath Ledger's Joker, obviously. Come on. He is the best live-action version of the Joker, in my humble opinion. He plays up the more anarchist side of things, whereas Jack Nicholson takes on the more whimsical role. Heath Ledger is the more anarchist, right? He's the more sadistic. He's the sadist. Like Alfred says, like Michael Caine's Alfred says, some men just want to watch the world burn. That is Heath Ledger's Joker. All he wants to do is bring chaos upon Gotham, bring Batman over to his side, and show that they're more alike than they think and that they aren't that different. And like he does to Harvey Dent, aka Two-Face, played by Aaron Eckhart, one bad day, right? Like he always says, one bad day. He does that because he knows that he can even turn the best of us to the dark side, and I love everything about his portrayal. It was one of those casting choices that everybody judged when he was first casted, and then he went and gave what may be my favorite movie villain of all time, and one of the best performances I've ever seen on screen. I think almost everyone can agree with that. He won an Oscar for it after his passing, so RIP to a legend, but what he left us with was something that I don't think will ever be touched. Joaquin Phoenix did a fantastic job, but to me, he still leaps, bounds, leagues below Heath Ledger's performance. Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face, I'll put him a notch below Jim Carrey's Riddler. You're not used to seeing Tommy Lee Jones like this. He normally plays the more serious, kind of gruff roles, but he really hammed it up for this one, and I appreciate that he did that. However, that's just not Two-Face, man. That's not Two-Face to me, and I just don't like his portrayal all that much. Like, I appreciate that he really went for it, but I just didn't dig it at all. I didn't care for it very much. Jared Leto's Joker. Jeez Louise. I could put him in rock bottom. Could I? Should I? Oh, this is a tough one. This is actually the toughest one to place so far. Look, I'll put him in Superman just because of that one sort of end credit scene from Zack Snyder's Justice League. I actually do like the mini performance he gives there. I like his interaction with Batman. His laugh is more suiting for that moment, that scene. The stuff that he says is like really messed up, and I like that. His performance in Suicide Squad 2016 sucks. It's awful. That would have put him in rock bottom, but honestly, that one exchange in the Nightmare reality, I think does bump him up to that Superman tier, because I had goosebumps, and I thought that version of the character is better suited for the Nightmare reality, and I wish he went for it a different way in Suicide Squad 2016, but it did work in that Nightmare sequence, so I'll bump him up a little bit because I actually do enjoy that Nightmare sequence. Sorry, Mr. Eisenberg. Yeah, I do not vibe with his Lex Luthor at all. It was terrible casting in my opinion when they first casted him. I gave him the benefit of the doubt and said, you know what, we'll wait and see the movie. Zack Snyder might have a plan. We saw the movie, and he is just this weird, quirky, snarky, he's a bit of a freak, and I appreciate that he went and took a different take on the character, and I appreciate that they tried something new, but it didn't work for me at all. His plan is absolutely bonkers, batshit crazy, ridiculous. There's no way it ever would have worked in a million years. There's so many coincidences, so many conveniences, so many things that need to fall perfectly into place. So his plan just doesn't work. His performance, it didn't work for me at all. So rock bottom for him. Sorry, Eisenberg. He's a great actor, but not great for that. Liam Neeson as Ra's al Ghul, however you prefer to pronounce it. I actually liked his portrayal a lot. I think it was pretty easy for people to figure out that he was Ra's al Ghul instead of the man that they had in the role, or pretending to be in the role. But I just love the way he trains Bruce, how he befriends him, and then how they kind of turn against one another. He has so many iconic quotable lines, and I just love his methodology. I love his mindset for this world. Obviously, I don't agree with it at all, but I love his mindset in Batman Begins and where he's coming from. And again, Liam Neeson's just Liam Neeson. You gotta love the guy. You gotta. Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, definitely. I don't quite put her in the Godlike tier, and she's also the only Catwoman on this list because I do believe that she is a straight-up villain. She is definitely the most iconic version of the character thus far. She's more iconic than Anne Hathaway. Zoe Kravitz, maybe if we get more of her, could be a bit of competition, but it's the voice, it's the whip, it's the outfit, it's the zany hair, it's, the flip-flopping both sides of the character, the Selena Kyle version and the Catwoman version. Just everything about her screams iconic, so how could I not put her in the awesome sauce tier? Definitely deserving of it. Phantasm, it's more so the person behind the mask in Phantasm that makes Phantasm so special and such a special villain. However, Phantasm themselves is not necessarily the best of the best when it comes to Batman's animated rogues gallery. I do like the stoic presence. I do like the ominousness of the character with the fog and the claw hand and the deep bellowing voice. I love all of it. I love the presentation of the character, but it's not necessarily the most well-rounded villain, I would say, on this list. So Phantasm, I think, fits comfortably in that good as gold category. And now we're going to Eric Roberts as Sal Maroni. Same thing, I think, as the Falcone from Batman Begins. He gets a bit more screen time, Eric Roberts does, and he does all right, but again, he's just sort of that arrogant, thinks he's better than everyone else, larger-than-life mob boss, but he only has a few scenes. He has that, first scene with the Joker, and then he has the scene where Batman, sees him in the club and then drops him off a roof, breaking his legs or whatever, but he really doesn't get much more than that, so he does what he has to in the scenes that he has, but nothing more, right? He's not in it enough for me to justify putting him any higher. Steppenwolf from the 2017 Justice League, again, including those Justice League villains, because Batman does play a major role, hence they are, if they're Justice League villains, well, who's a part of the Justice League? Batman, villain. Yeah, he's horrible. The 2017 version is ass. The design is awful. His he's just so unmemorable. He does nothing. He's the most generic CGI villain you can possibly imagine. So, yeah, rock bottom, absolutely suiting for the 2017 version of Steppenwolf. The 2021 version of Steppenwolf, I'll put him in good as gold. I think I could put him in awesome sauce because I do love the performance. This redesign is so much better. He's so much more menacing. The armor is so much cooler. You get a lot more backstory from him. You get a lot more scenes with just him. And he is a great villain. Marginally improved. However, he also does sort of fall into that category that in the end he really is just a glorified henchman. He's just doing Darkseid's bidding. And his plan is just sort of the generic, I'm going to take over the world. Yay. I get that he's doing it, which is a better version, because he wants, he betrayed Darkseid and he's trying to get back in the good graces, and I love all that stuff. But when I look at the villains like Jack Nicholson's Joker, Tom Hardy's Bane, Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, I just don't think he's quite at that caliber. So I think he is great, and I think he was a fantastic choice for the Justice League's first real threat, and this version is marginally better than what we got in the 2017 version. However, I don't think he is quite as iconic as those who are in the tiers above him. Talia al Ghul, I am so sorry, Marion Cotillard. She's a great actress, honestly. She is a phenomenal actress. Again, another one that falls in those categories of just one of the most underrated actresses. However, the twist with her in The Dark Knight Rises, one, you can see it a mile away. If you know Batman lore whatsoever, you knew this was coming. And they wedge it in to the very end of the movie. She has one of the worst on-screen deaths I think I have ever seen. And then it also pulls so much away from Tom Hardy's brilliant performance as Bane that I really just don't care for her character at all. It really bugs me that I know they were trying to pull out the rug, but I don't even think she was in the movie enough for me to really be like, gasp. She's been this person all along. She has like 2-3 scenes before that. And I never connected with her character on any level before she was revealed to be Talia al Ghul. And then all the Talia al Ghul twisted was just kind of pissed me off. So, yeah, rock bottom. Sorry. Poison Ivy, yeah, Uma Thurman, great actress. Everybody knows it. But again, with this movie, Batman and Robin, it just missed the mark again on another iconic character. They completely misunderstood the assignment. This, aside from her wearing green and having red hair and liking plants, nothing to do with Poison Ivy or who that character is or anything like that. So, yeah, definitely gotta, yeah. You can't see them all, but I put all the 60s villain into one picture. You have Cesar Romero's Joker, you have the Penguin, the Riddler, and Catwoman there. You can kind of see her ears and see the side of Cesar Romero right there, his Joker face. I know a lot of people aren't going to include these villains on their list because they're so old school and they're so campy, and probably the vast majority of my viewers haven't even seen this movie, don't recognize any of these characters aside from just knowing basic Batman knowledge. I'm a huge believer in respecting the past and embracing the future, and in order to respect the past, you have to recognize it. So, recognizing that the 60s villains, they did it first, right? They were the first interpretations for these characters or portrayals, definitely guided where Batman stories went after that. So I do have to recognize them and respect them. I'm just putting them in that category because they have to go somewhere in the middle, because they do their job, right? Like, yeah, if you look back on it now, without rose-tinted glasses, if you go back and watch this movie for the first time, you're just gonna laugh at it. But if you understand that it was made in the 60s, for an audience in the 60s, it was made for kids, really, more than anything, because, back then, comic books were seen as just things for kids. So it was like a kids' TV series and a kids' movie made in the 60s. So, yeah, like, compared to some of these performances, it's not very good at all. But for those versions of the characters, for that audience, it worked really well. So, quite alright, I think, is suiting for a 1966 cast of villains. And then we have Max Schreck from Christopher Walken. I think I'll also put him in the good as gold tier. It's Christopher Walken being Christopher Walken in a Tim Burton movie. He's got the hair. He is the businessman, the cold-blooded, heartless, ruthless businessman who pushes his assistant out of a window to try and kill her, works with the Penguin to take over Gotham and bring down the Batman and all that stuff. I think he does well enough in the role. I could have possibly bumped him down a little bit lower, but you know what? I like Christopher Walken. Everyone knows the iconic Christopher Walken voice. I like his character, and I like the role that he plays in Batman Returns. So, yeah, why not? And now we'll do this just to add on to the end of the video very quickly, because I've actually seen a lot of people doing this lately, like having a last little ranking, and then just kind of like switching the pictures in order from starting from like this where Riddler is right now being number 1, and then going 1, 2, 3, da 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 da, and then ending way down here. And I think I have like 31 characters, so I'll reorganize them right now in like a final ranking, just so everyone I guess knows where I stand with these characters. So I guess, you know, we'll see how it works. So obviously I'm bumping this around. Look, Paul Dano did great, but Heath Ledger, my favorite live action version of the Joker. Mark Hamill's my favorite version of the Joker in general. I would probably order this a little bit more like this, I would say. Actually, I think I like Michelle. I'd probably go like this. Jack Nicholson being the first, so it'll be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I like Harley Quinn, obviously. Again, Margot Robbie's performance is why she ends up so high, but she's not really like a Batman villain in this universe. If we went in this order, I think Shrek would stay in last. And I'd probably do this. Actually, you know what? I'd probably keep this the way it is. I think that's kind of suiting for the way it is, because I love Cillian Murphy. Yeah, no, honestly, I think I'd probably leave that the way it is. This one, I would probably swap, because, again, Darkseid only very briefly featured in Zack Snyder's Justice League and doesn't actually get to face off against the Justice League. So I think I would leave it like that. This one, these ones, I don't even really care about. These ones are the toughest ones to place because, I mean, Jared Leto's Joker, I'd probably put Tommy Lee in first because he gets the most screen time. And I'd probably put Jared Leto here because he gets... the second most screen time. Why is this, like, it's friggin' with me. And then, honestly, I'd probably do that. And for this last one, this one's probably the hardest one to do, because I really just don't like any of these people at all. I'd probably put Bane in last, Mr. Freeze second last. Like, all these three would end up in last place because they, again, completely missed the mark on who these characters are, what they represent, their motives, everything. They missed the mark on everything with these characters. Steppenwolf next. And then probably by default, I'd say, because I like Ben Mendelsohn, and then Lau does, you know, at least he's decent. Jesse Eisenberg missed the mark, but I appreciate that they did something different. And then Talia al Ghul, because I absolutely hate the twist. So, there's my ranking. In order, that would be first place, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You get the gist, ending with the very last place down here with that horrible, horrible iteration of Bane. And that's it. So there's my tier list where I put each character in and my final ranking. And of course, now, well, back to me. So that is all for today's video, folks. Be sure to let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree with which tier I put each character in. While you're at it, feel free to let me know which tier you would have put each character in. And feel free to suggest which tier video you'd like to see me cover next. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. And if you'd like to see more content, consider subscribing to my channel and ringing that little bell icon. That way you can be notified about all of my latest uploads. And as always, stay safe. Thank you so much for watching. And that's a wrap. Hey you, yeah you, if you made it this far, just know I appreciate you, and while you're here, consider hitting that subscribe button.